Hello, class, receiving students and teachers. You may be seated. We're still on the same strand, teachers. Earth and beyond, our earth and its origin, the substrand, and the outcome 8.4.1. Now that I'd like us to recall our previous lesson, our receiving students and the model class. Previous lesson was on igneous rocks. Now we had a look at different types of igneous rocks. We found out that, or we learned that some igneous rocks are formed above the surface and some are below the surface. Now I'd like the class and also the receiving students to tell your teacher those different types of igneous rocks. Now I'd like model class and the receiving students to tell us, your teachers, the names of rocks which are formed above the surface. Names of igneous rocks that are formed above the surface. Violet, if you are able to tell us all those, name all those rocks.
And scoria and obsidian.
Well, thank you. There is one that is formed below the surface of Earth. Gima, if you can tell us what that rock is. There are two types, but it's all the same rock.
Granite.
Granite, thank you. Now, rocks that are formed above the surface, there are some that are formed while they are still in the air. If I can have Nanadai to tell us.
Pumice and scoria.
Very good, thank you. Class and the receiving students, I've got two pictures, and I'd like us to have a look at those pictures. When you see each picture, I'd like you to think about what those pictures tell you. What do they tell you? Now, that is our first picture. Have a good look at the picture. You can quickly talk about it with your friend. What that picture actually shows you. Receiving students, you can do that. That is our first picture. That's our second picture. Now, if I can have Cara to tell us what the first picture was about. Or what did you actually see in the first picture?
A rock being cracked in the middle.
Very good, thank you. Rock being cracked. Thank you, receiving students. I hope you also did the same. Our second picture, Patrick, if you can tell us what the second picture tells you about.
Lake water.
Lake water. Anything else besides lake water, Gail? Patrick is just telling us it's lake water. What else can you see, especially the environment around that water that Patrick is talking about?
The river and the land is like the sides are breaking up.
Very good, thank you. The sides of the lake or the river is breaking down, the soil. Now, besides those two pictures that you have just seen and discussed together, we will view a short video. Now, the short video together with the two pictures that you have just seen should help you to understand and to know what we will be going through in this lesson.
What powerful forces of erosion have polished these granite peaks and gouged out this wide valley? The valley was carved by a glacier. During past ice ages, glaciers covered vast areas on all continents. They appear to be motionless. But time-lapse photography shows this glacier is slowly moving. The ice carries along rock fragments that grind and carve the valley floor, eroding the landscape. We still wonder what caused the ice ages. Why did glaciers form and then recede several times? Is a new ice age coming? Earth materials are eroded and transported by water, wind, and gravity. Running water is the Earth's most powerful agent of erosion. Every day, streams and rivers carry many billions of tons of soil and rock into the oceans.
Now, our class and the receiving students, that short video you just saw leads us to our topic, weathering and erosion. So the two pictures that you have seen, the first one of the rock that is being cracked, that is showing an example of what weathering is. And the second one with the river shows you what erosion is. So those are just two examples. You also viewed that video, and if you have watched carefully, you would have seen there's a mention of river and other things that deal with weathering and erosion. Now, weathering is the process by which rocks are broken down, just like that example you have seen in the first picture. There are two types of weathering. We have one which is known as physical weathering, and another is chemical weathering. Physical weathering we have where, an example, we have roots. When a tree grows, when there is a crack in the rock and seeds are dropped into the crack in the rock, and when the tree grows, it has roots. And the roots, once they grow out into all the cracks, those small cracks become big. And that is how rocks are broken down. We also have another way where weathering is done, and that is where the sand grains are carried by wind, wearing away the rocks. Where there is sand and rocks, when the wind starts to blow against the rocks, and while it's carrying the sand away, it wears down the rocks. So that is another way where weathering takes place. Besides those two ways of weathering, we also have another. This is where changes of temperature can crack rocks. That's another way of weathering. Changes of temperature cracks rock. When there is a hot day, and after the hot day and the night air cools the rocks crack, the outside of the rock cracks, and that's another way weathering takes place. Now, our second type of weathering is chemical weathering, where minerals in the rocks react with water and air, and they cause rocks to crack and also crumble. Now, weathering and erosion, they go together to weather or to wear out rocks. So our next one we'll be looking at is erosion. And erosion is a movement of soil and other weathered material from one place to another. Now, there are four main ways in which erosion takes place. One of them is wind. They are known as main agents of erosion, main ways where erosion takes place. And the first one is wind, where wind blows against sand or whatever soil is there, carrying away whatever materials are around. Second agent or second way is water, and first one we have is rivers. Now, in the video that you have viewed earlier, there was a mention that rivers are the main agents of erosion. Rivers carry away a lot of materials, and that includes rocks that are weathered as well as soil. With water, we also have sea. Sea also erodes rocks, and you can see an example of that in the picture there. We have the rocks here. If you look at it closely, you see bottom of the rock where the sea is, it's very thin. That shows that the seawater washed away the softer part of the rock that is in the water, and only the strong part of the rock that is above the sea is left. So that's another way erosion takes place. We also have ice as one of the agents of erosion. Now, ice, there are moving ice that move like rivers, and they are called glaciers. And as they move down the mountains or hills, they carry with them rocks that are weathered down into the rivers and the seas. Now, our activity for this lesson, receiving students and teachers, you have been told in the previous lesson to collect limestones, and I hope you have done that and you have them with you. We will be using those limestones, and in this lesson, we will be experimenting how chemical weathering takes place. Now, teachers, you were also reminded that if you cannot afford to have vinegar, then you could use lemon. Now, our model class will be using vinegar. And I'd like to have the runners to come and get your materials. Don't do anything with the materials. You just take them and leave them on the table. Don't touch them. Now, class and the receiving students, I am going to go through all the instructions, And I'd like you to take note of every instruction as we go through. And after I finish with the instructions, then I will come back to the instruction again and to make sure you follow what you are supposed to be doing in this lesson activity. Now, our first part of the activity, the instruction says we are to predict what will happen when vinegar is poured on the limestone, and we give our reasons. I'd like you to do that quickly. Discuss in your groups, receiving students to do the same. Predict what will happen when vinegar is put or poured on the limestone. Have your predictions written. Now let's see what you have for your prediction. Patricia, what do you and your friends have for your prediction? What do you think will happen when vinegar is poured on the limestone?
It will break down.
What will break down?
The limestone.
The limestone. So that's the prediction. Lime. Now, can you give us a reason? Group 1, can you give us a reason why you say limestone will break down? Why do you say limestone will break down?
Because vinegar is an acid.
Because
Vinegar is an acid.
vinegar is an acid. Good, that's your response. Okay, thank you, Group 1 receiving students. That's the prediction your friends came up with, and they gave their reasons for their predictions, and I hope you have also done the same. Now, our experiment steps, please. Receiving students in the class, take note as I go through the steps of the experiment. The first step, it says you are to put the limestone on the piece of cardboard. Receiving students, you can have yours on the cardboard. With your friends, the model class, they will have theirs in the beaker. Now, teachers, sorry, there's a change there. Instead of cardboard, you have containers. If you don't have beakers, your students can use containers, plastic containers, or any old containers that you have at the school. The second step is for you to pour some vinegar, or if you have lemon, receiving teachers, on the limestone that is in the container or in the beaker. Then thirdly, you observe to see what happens and you record your findings. Okay, so I will have the class and the receiving students to go on with that activity. It's a very short activity. And receiving teachers, the model class, they have the worksheets with them. But if you don't have the worksheets with you, receiving teachers, you should have a table like this, where it says observe and record your daily findings. Now, this experiment, we will be observing it over 2 or 3 more days to see what actually happens. And you should also have, day 1 is today, this lesson that we are having. What your students find, they should record. And the next 2 days, they will continue to observe the changes that takes place in that limestone and have them recorded where it says second day and also third day. Then after the third day, students will give their reasons for the changes that has taken place. And we will do a general evaluation of our experiment when we come to this part. After the third day, the students have observed that experiment, the limestone, and have recorded the changes that they have seen. Okay, so class, I will come around with the vinegar, and you have your worksheet, so I'd like you to take note of that. You also have a lens there. That lens is for you to use it to see closely what's happening once vinegar is poured into the beaker. Wait first. Okay, this may take time, so listen. This may take time, so I will just get it poured in, okay? And you have to observe quickly to see what happens. You can use your hand lens. The lens, you have to see what happens. This rock may be too big, but let's. Okay, so let's see. No, that's okay. We will use this one, but that one will take time. Okay, you quickly, you see bubbles coming out? Quickly observe to see what happens. That will take time. See what's coming out. Get your what? You quickly observe to see what's happening with the lens. Let it stay still and see. Sorry. Our dropper will take time, so just look at the water and try to see what's happening. Look at the vinegar in the beaker and you see what's happening. You can use the lens to have a look. Sorry. That will take time, so I will just get it in. And I want you to look closely at the water. And you can put it in there, over there, and see. Our dropper will take time, so we'll just have your hand lens. Look at it, you can see. Can you see that one there? Like bubbles coming out? And let's have yours. Sorry. I want to see whether that's open. This one open or? It's open. Okay. That's where we will put our. You will be putting that away there. Class and the receiving students, you are to record your findings, what you have seen. And after you have done your recordings, we will just go through what you found out, and we'll try to confirm the prediction that was made earlier in the lesson. Then those limestone that you have in the vinegar will be put away, and you will have the next 2 days to observe to see what will happen. And you are to record those findings in the table that has been provided. Once again, teachers in the receiving schools, you can have the table that I've just gone through with you earlier in the lesson for your students to get copied into their workbooks, and they can use that one. Now, on the third day, after you have observed and written the changes, you are to write a report on your findings. From the beginning, what you saw, to the end, you write a report about that. Now, let's see what you found out from that experiment you just did. Our prediction was the limestone will break down, and the reason given was because vinegar is an acid. Let's have group 3. Group 3 to give us their findings of that experiment. Please, group 3.
The limestone is slowly breaking down.
Okay, good. Let's have one from group 2. That's group 3's findings. How about group 2, please?
We can see bubbles coming out of the stone and some cracks.
Very good. So, students, receiving students in the class, what we just got, the findings that we got from the 2 groups is when vinegar is put in, you see bubbles coming out of the stone. Now, can someone tell me, receiving students as well, why do you think those bubbles came out of the stone? Why? Hayano, would you like to tell us of what you think?
We think that there were little holes in the limestone. So when we added the vinegar, there was air in the small holes, and the vinegar took up the space. That's why the bubbles came up.
Very good, thank you. Now, those bubbles you have seen is an indication that there is also acid or chemical in the limestone. Okay, limestone has a chemical called calcium carbonate. So when vinegar is also an acid, you know that very well. When vinegar is put together with or put on the limestone, the chemical in the limestone reacted with vinegar, and that is where you saw the bubbles coming out. Now, in the next 2 days, I'd like you, the class and the receiving students, to observe and see the changes. And as I said earlier, in the third day, our third lesson, we will have a look at why limestone reacts with vinegar, and we see what actually happens to limestones. Now, our summary, we have one that says, weathering and erosion work together to wear the Earth's surface. Two, there are two types of weathering. We have physical and chemical. It's a base. Three, the movement of rocks and other weathered materials are done by the wind, water, and ice. Four, erosion is a natural process, but human activity often causes it to occur more quickly. Now, why do we say human activities cause erosion to occur more quickly? Can I have the class receiving students? You can just tell your teacher why we say human activities also cause erosion to occur more quickly. Paul Simon? How do they do it?
Maybe it causes by mining or bombings.
Very good, thank you. Simon gave us a good answer there, Paul Simon. Mining and other things, they cause erosion too. Thank you. Now, before we go to our key phrase, we've just did an experiment, and we used vinegar. Now, we all know that vinegar is an acid. Now, vinegar is an acid. It reacts with the chemical that is in limestone. So, what do you think that chemical in limestone is? Is it an acid or a base? Can I have someone from the class and university students to give us the answer? Tanabik?
It's a base.
Very good, thank you. When you put acid and base, they react. If you put two same type of chemicals, if there are two acids, bases, you don't see any reactions in there. Our key phrase, let's have Regina to give us a key phrase for this lesson.
Weathering and erosion.
Thank you. Okay, let's see what I have. Breaking down and movement of rocks is our key phrase. Our next lesson is on transportation and deposition. Now, the class and the receiving students, I'd like you to think about that. Be prepared when you come for the next lesson. This transportation is not talking about you getting on a car or PME to go to town or what. This is to do with weathered materials, materials that are eroded. And teachers, the materials we need are listed there. Take note of that. And with that, thank you, class and the receiving students with your teachers.